Recently, I have seen an uptick in social media and news postings about pastors who have committed acts of misconduct. Some of it is criminal, and other types involve conduct unbecoming of a pastor, such as abuse of power, inappropriate relations that do not involve criminal activity, or conflicts of interest, to name a few. I don't know if there's a real increase or simply that more is just being reported. I suspect with the increasing use of social media, we are simply hearing more about what has existed for a long time. What I find concerning is that when these are posted and are substantiated, a large number of comments seem to make excuses for them and rally to their defense. They are targets of the devil. They are sinners too. We should forgive. They need our support. They will be restored, and so on. Some of these may be true, but they are not excuses for a free pass. Some comments portray the pastor as the victim while ignoring the true ones. Let's look at some things to consider in dealing with some of those who have failed, but also in fairness and caution in not rushing to judgment either. We will then look at the biblical standards required to serve in the office of pastor. First, I want to share where my perspectives come from on this. I am an active attorney and have advised churches and their governing bodies on removal of pastors for sexual misconduct. I have had special training, including medical forensics and prosecuting crimes against children, and been involved in a number of successful prosecutions. I've also practiced domestic relations law. In addition, I possess a doctorate in theology and an associate's in biblical ministry. To preserve any confidentialities, I'm not going to discuss the specifics of any case except what is public knowledge, but can offer my insights based on experience. And let me give the standard legal disclaimer that nothing in this presentation is to be construed or considered as legal advice. So let's take a look at the pedophile pastor. First, these people did not go into the ministry with the prime motivation to serve the Lord. They see the church as an easy mark to help further their addiction. They can work unsupervised with little, if any, oversight over their daily activities. Sure, there might be trustees or board members or maybe even another employee, but they do not see or control what they are really doing, to whom they are having contacts, or where they are. As a minister, by simply being in the office, they have respect, credibility, and looked upon as having an elevated moral status. No one questions them. For them, there could not be a better environment to be in. Because of their status and people thinking they really personally know them, though they may only see them 1 hour per week in a public forum, when substantiated allegations occur. When substantiated allegations occur, there is shock, disbelief, and denial. I'm dismayed at the number of people who rally to their defense. They make excuses for them. That teen girl tempted him. The way she dressed. It was her fault. Pastor worked well with my son. Never any problems. So that other child is making it up. I look at his family and the problems they have. That's a problem child just making more problems. Well, let me ask this. You don't think the pastor didn't know that? He knew which ones to pick out that might not sound credible. These are very manipulative people. Some other arguments. Our pastor is a man of God. How dare anyone attack him? It's an attack on the church. We are all sinners and tempted. Don't judge. He needs help and understanding, and so on. I've personally seen this. In one church where I was a member, the pastor was very dogmatic and went beyond observing church rituals and traditions than most I've seen. It was a facade for credibility. When he was under investigation by law enforcement for incidents with multiple children, he became a fugitive. Yet many in the church rallied to his defense and support regardless. The fugitive pastor did end up serving jail time, but it took several years to get there. This also describes why these cases are not easy ones to prosecute. One might think the case is a slam dunk and clear cut, should be an easy conviction. Not so. Let's look at why. A parental cooperation may be difficult. Why? One of the biggest ones is that the parents blame themselves or their children. Their kids were wimps. Why couldn't they stand up for themselves? They were weak. As parents, they failed. They should have taught their children to be stronger. Also, the parents did not want to drag their children through the incidents again at trial. It would be public and embarrassing for them. However, courts do have alternative methods on testimonies for minors involved in these types of cases to lessen the trauma. Two, the parents are hesitant, as they see it, to go against such an authority and respected figure and the institution they were involved with. They did respect the institution and somehow thought they were damaging it. What would others think about or treat them in the church if they were seen as discrediting it? Juries can be difficult. In case of physical injury, some on the jury may feel, biblically, it is an adult's right to harshly discipline children. I've seen this. Being charged with the crime and obtaining the conviction and lengthy jail sentence are not always easy. And let's not confuse forgiveness with accountability and consequences. These persons can be forgiven, but it does not negate the consequences they must face from their actions. A jail sentence must still be served or a fine or restitution paid. The convicted can pray for strength and guidance in prison and in life going forward, but it does not mean the sentence should not be served. A pedophile should never be allowed in church ministry again, or for that matter, any ministry, as one must question their true motivation for going into it. Later, we will look at the biblical qualifications for a minister. In past times, they were simply recycled among churches. Those days, well, I hope, are gone. I think church leaders now recognize their personal liabilities involved, though still that does not always seem to be the case. A return to church ministry should be a non-issue because most are on registries which would prohibit contact with minors. However, these people are never cured. They can go to therapy for control, but access to children, the temptation, must be denied. And dealing with allegations of misconduct, whether criminal or not, one thing to consider is that some people are attracted to those in certain professions. These professions include doctors, attorneys, accountants, and pastors. What do these have in common? Well, people go to them when they have problems they need to solve. They are authority figures. They have the perceived power to solve their issues. Unfortunately, this also creates fantasies in some people's minds about having relations with them. These are people with instability in their lives. They see stability in the ones they consult with. This is something to be aware of if you receive an uncorroborated allegation with no evidence other than the person's word about affairs, overtures, or financial arrangements. First, they do need to be taken seriously. Certainly, if there is an allegation of criminal activity, it needs to be reported and let the authorities figure it out. A failure to do so can result in criminal liabilities for you. However, that situation aside, proceed cautiously. For example, if one claims that a pastor is inappropriately texting them, ask to see the text. This presentation is not about how to conduct an investigation, but do try to find out more before making a decision. You may also consider hiring an outside party to do it. Don't have a knee-jerk reaction and then go remove the pastor on an allegation that has not been further examined. Social media will pick it up and it's out there. There will be pressure to take adverse action, but what if it then turns out to be totally false? I know of 2 cases where false allegations were made against pastors which turned up in the media before the truth was found. In one, the adult female made allegations of sexual relations against a pastor which turned out to be totally made up. The pastor barely even knew the individual and only as a visitor to the church to whom he had counseled once. It was also clear the person's motivation was for some type of financial hush settlement. Despite that, the pastor's reputations were at least tarnished. Well, that person then ran off to find another target. I personally can understand the risk. I once had a family law practice. Most of my clientele were females in their 20s or early 30s. They came to see me on issues of paternity, child support, separations, divorce, or financial matters. Once I received a call from a relative of one of my clients who told me what my client was saying out there to her friends about me. I assured the relative it was totally false. It was either wishful thinking or a fantasy on her part. I also transfer that client to another attorney. So be aware of how false allegations can happen. Again, I am not in any way suggesting they be dismissed. They do need to be investigated, but don't have an instant reaction and start disciplinary actions either without further looking into them. For example, if they say they were at the pastor's house, ask them to describe it. Was anyone else there? Once there was a person I did not know, could not even recall meeting, and could not find any record of contacts whatsoever, tell all these stories to another attorney about my supposed misconduct that occurred to her in my office on a certain date. Well, I was in another state that week. When I finally met her, I did not introduce myself. She had no idea who I was. She even asked, "Who is that man? I've never seen him before." So just proceed with caution. We have reviewed some of the complexities in dealing with pastoral misconduct. These have included supportive congregations, pastoral manipulations, difficult prosecutions, and recognizing false allegations. We have seen why it can be difficult for church boards, trustees, or governing bodies to manage these. It is a lot. They may be ill prepared to handle it. However, the worst thing they can do is nothing. Assistance is available through reaching out to those with experience or expertise in these matters. Probably all church governing bodies and many independent churches have specific procedures. If your church does not, then work to develop some. Find resources to help do that now before being faced with an incident. Again, look at the biblical qualifications for a minister. Are they being met? Let's look at them. They are principally found in 1 Timothy 3, 1 through 7, Titus 1, 5 through 9. Let me take a few moments just to go through and list them. 1 Timothy, they are blameless, vigilant, sober. And when we say sober, we're not only referring to alcohol or drugs, but anything which impairs judgment, and staying clear-minded. Good behavior, given to hospitality, apt to teach, not a striker, not greedy, patient, not a brawler, not covetous, manages his family well, and children obey and respect him. Let me say I have seen cases where the children did not obey and respect, and that led to the pastor's downfall. Not a novice. This can help prevent pride. Let me expand on this and say that one must be mature in the faith and grounded in Scripture. They've been forged in the fire and been through the challenges to get there. That can be a humbling experience. I personally have found it to be so. And respected by those outside the church. Comment about this, and ministers must recognize the community, whether churchgoers or not, Christian or not, do expect ministers to have higher standards. They are respected for adhering to them. In Titus 1, 5 through 9, some are holding fast to what was taught, not unruly, just, temperate, not self-willed. In many cases, the pastors can be restored, but it is beyond the scope of this presentation. I have been involved in the removal of pastors for non-criminal sexual misconduct, and my hope was that they could be restored. However, some never belonged in the ministry in the first place. It will take a healing process with the church membership, the pastor, and the family. It will not be easy, and it will take a while to get through the gradual steps. However, some must never be allowed back into the ministry. Thanks.